I want to tell you a story. It's a story about prayer. I hope it inspires you. 1857, there was a man named Jeremiah Lanphier who lived in New York City. He was a businessman. And he came to Christ, and sometime after he came to Christ, he gave up his business career and he took a modest position in ministry. He was kind of a missionary / pastor to a community in New York City. There was a church there and it was kind of dying. They were thinking about closing it, but they thought, well, rather than closing it, let's hire this guy. And let's see if he can revitalize the spiritual temperature of the community. So Mr. Jeremiah did everything he needed to do. He went out and he began to evangelize and tell people about Jesus with very little results. And he had a moment of clarity. He thought, well, rather than trying to revitalize the community, why don't I set up a time of prayer from 12 noon to 1 o'clock and invite people to come, and we'll pray and we'll ask God to revitalize the community spiritually. So that's what he did. He got a room and he kind of prepared it. He put together some handbills and some posters, and he invited everybody he knew, tried to create some momentum. September 23rd was the date. He got to that day, 12 noon, boom. Nobody showed up. Just him. So he traveled up to the 3rd floor room where the prayer was supposed to happen. And he began to pray. 10 minutes go by, 20 minutes go by. At 12:30, finally he hears a single soul walking up the creek, squeaky steps. But it was 1, and then there was 2, and then there was 3, and then there was 6. 6 people by the end of the day. And they didn't have long to pray, so they prayed very short prayers, but they decided, let's do it again next week. So next week, 6 turned into 20. Then 20, the next week, turned into 40. Well, now, Mr. Lanphier is getting kind of fired up. He's adding faith to the fire. He decides, I'm gonna get a bigger room. And we're gonna do this instead of once a week, we'll just do this every day. I think that's an extraordinary step of faith. Here's what he didn't know, that next week, the biggest financial crisis would hit the market in the country up to that point in time in our history. And everybody began to panic and they flooded into the prayer meeting, such that in a very short period of time, it wasn't 6, it was 3,000 people a day praying in New York City. Well, now the newspaper caught wind of it. They reported on it, and then it escaped one location and it moved out. A move of God began to take place in other places in New York. And then, so other people began to meet from 12 noon to 1 o'clock in prayer. And then in a short period of time, it wasn't 3,000, it was 10,000. That's 10,000 people a day praying in New York City. And so when that began to happen, it escaped New York. That doesn't mean it left New York. It went down south and it headed out west. And in a 2-year period of time, every major city between New York and Pacific Ocean fell under the move of God in prayer. And so, listen, so the estimates are like somewhere between 300,000 and 1 million people came to Christ in a 2-year period of time under the weight of this movement of God in prayer. Yeah, I mean, I think that's amazing, but listen, I'll remind you what I said earlier. Prayer's not powerful when we talk about it. Prayer's powerful when we engage God in it. And certainly it's powerful when hundreds of thousands of people begin to pray, but it doesn't start there, right? It starts with the one.